to know what it feels like to win, to be a winner, and then to lose, and almost feel like the weight of, did I live up to the standard and the precedent I set to myself previously? So for some reason the other day I was thinking about the really interesting highs and lows that I've had when it comes to things like competing and goals. And some of the best stories that came to mind had to do with martial arts and music. Especially when I was a teenager, I was really, really into martial arts. I mean, that was my sport. And I went to such a cool dojo. We trained in our form of Kempo, which was kind of a combination of kickboxing and jiu-jitsu and karate and some Filipino stick fighting and things of that nature. We also had classes for Aikijitsu, which is similar to judo or aikido, a lot of rolling, joint locks, throws, that kind of thing. And then we also had a kickboxing focused exercise class. I did it all, and I was pretty good at it. We were allowed to free-form spar from the get-go. Now, there were safety measures in place. We had to get the pads and the mouth guard. If you were somebody just starting out, I believe you could only spar with black belts who knew how to control themselves and not hurt you. But even so, we really got the opportunity that not all martial arts students get, which is to figure out how to apply the techniques that we were learning in a fighting another human being situation, and have to have timing and be able to switch sides and be able to dodge and block and take a hit, not get hit super hard, but still take a hit and figure out how to respond to that. Sometimes those sparring matches would go to the ground and end up grappling. Sometimes they'd stay standing. And that gave us a real edge, I felt like, when it came to tournaments. Now, again, I took this really seriously, which is why I mean, I have stuff like this. Because I didn't really do sports in school. I mostly did music and theater related things in school. But, you know, when it came to martial arts, like I remember one week walking into school being so sore in every part of my body because I had just been doing back-to-back classes multiple days that week. And I remember actually feeling kind of like I had a fever because like my whole body was just trying to repair from the workouts that week, and it just felt like a champion. So I went to what I believe was my first tournament. And if you've never been to a martial arts tournament before, they have lots of different styles of doing things. The particular tournament I went to, they had forms competitions, or some might say katas, and that's basically like, it's like a choreographed dance full of techniques where you show off your prowess, and then they give you like a number score. There was grappling, which is basically like wrestling but with joint locks, again for the people who do things like Aikijitsu and judo. There was point sparring, which was the thing I was most into, which isn't really entirely like free-form sparring or fighting. You know, you score a point and then they reset you, but kind of like fencing in that regard. Now, massive props to the people who do things like continuous fight tournaments and Muay Thai. That stuff is hardcore, but that wasn't the type of competition that I did. Anyway, at this time I was like a little bitty orange belt or yellow belt, but because of the way our school taught, I had a lot of practical fight training, and that felt really, really good. But there was nobody in my belt bracket, nobody for me to fight against. And so they were like, well, we can give you like a consolation medal, or if you want, you can go up into the next belt bracket with the more advanced, the intermediate students. And I was like, well, I didn't come here for nothing. I didn't come here to get a medal for nothing. I came to throw down. And this is a great story. I went through, I think there was either 2 or 3 bouts in my bracket. I won the first and second. And so I get into the final match, and I'm fighting this kid, and it was such a Karate Kid moment. We both had 2 points, and you needed 3 points to win. Suddenly he does something he's not done for the entirety of the match. He steps back into what I think was like a high back stance or like a cat stance. Like he really digs his weight into his rear foot. And then he brings his hands up like this. And I have no idea what he's doing. I'm thinking, did this guy, you know, did he watch Jet Li the One last night? To some extent, maybe the point was to throw me off, and it was sort of working, but I knew better than to be thrown by it. So he goes from this, and he goes into this straight punch to the body. And thankfully, because of the way we had trained, my reflexes just sort of kicked in. I pushed off my back foot, rotated my shoulders. His fist goes right past me, and I just, dink, really lightly, really gingerly, pop him in the back of the head. Game point. Oh my goodness, it felt so good. Okay, the crowd didn't go crazy because there were tons of other events going on in this big room, lots of dojos there competing all at the same time. Still, great feeling to be the underdog, to go up into a division that was above my bracket, to make my school happy. I have the medal still. This is a gold. I know it doesn't look all that gold, but this is a gold medal. So then fast forward about a year later, I think it was a year, maybe 2 years later, go back to that same tournament, all these schools are there again. And I had psyched myself up that whole morning, like listening to POD in the car. And I don't think I ate enough, honestly. And maybe it was because of the adrenaline and I was so pumped up that I just didn't want to eat anything. That was a mistake. I ended up in a sparring division. I think I may have won my first bout. I don't entirely remember. But then I went up against this kid who was the son of a sensei. I don't remember if his dad was technically a grandmaster, like the starter of a style, or if his father was just the overall teacher of his own private school. In any case, this kid was good. I knew that I could beat him, but I also knew that he was very good. Maybe he was even better than me. Hard to really tell you. It was this many years removed, but I could tell he was very dedicated, hard worker. His style was different than mine, and this kid hit hard. And what was so interesting about that was either at that same tournament or a little bit before, I had a match where I'm really flexible and fast, and that's kind of was always my strength in martial arts. So I was landing headshot kicks on people, like roundhouse kicks to the head, and getting really clean points about it. And the thing is, with point sparring, you're not supposed to hit people too hard. We're not trying to injure anybody. I would get these really clean, nice ginger taps to the side of my opponent's head with the top of my foot gear, pads meeting pads, very controlled. And I had this one ring judge who it was almost like he was set against me. There's 3 ring judges, but this one every single time, call for contact. And what that means is they're going to basically review the play with the ring judges and decide if you hit the other guy too hard or inappropriately or not. I'm like, I didn't hit his face, I hit the side of his head, but I didn't say anything. I wasn't disrespectful. You definitely don't do that. But in my mind, I'm like, he's calling for contact every time and I'm not doing anything wrong. It really almost seemed like this guy wanted me to lose. But anyway, I won that bout. After technicality, I won that bout. But I'm in this fight with this kid who's just really good, and he's wailing on me pretty hard. Now, they weren't shots to the head, but he's just driving in these body shot roundhouses that, in my mind, I was like, how are they allowed to hit this? I wasn't going to complain. I mean, respect, dude. This is a fighting sport. It is what it is. I'm not going to cry about it. But I was just surprised, really, more than anything. But he wasn't messing around, and I respect that. Ended up losing this bout to this kid and felt awful because I had my sensei over there, between points trying to give me some tips or what to look out for. It was like my reflexes and my muscles and everything just kind of failed, and they were sluggish, and I was just dragging. And I don't know if it was the adrenaline. I don't know if it was because I didn't eat. Or maybe he was just better than me. I still think to this day I could have beaten him, but obviously he did beat me and he did a great job at it. So that was such a contrast in dealing with that. And for like a week after that fight, I remember I had scrapes on the side of my body where he'd been nailing those roundhouse kicks, and it hurt, and it just felt like I had this painful reminder, and I was just wearing that defeat, and that was bad. It really makes you examine your progress, where you're at, who you're up against. But then also, I've experienced very, very similar stuff in music. I've competed in a whole lot of different Battle of the Bands type stuff over the years. I remember being in one that myself and the band, we really just put a lot of work into. I had spent hours doing pre-production. I had sweet backing tracks. Now, we played our own instruments, we sang live, we weren't syncing to anything, but we had like extra string tracks and then transitions between the songs to really make the show punch. And we knew this was the kind of stuff the judges wanted because it was explicitly stated before the competition. Color coordinated scrims printed, and then we coordinated what we wore all together to match those scrims. I had props. I sang and I played 3 different instruments, the saxophone, the piano, and the guitar throughout the set. We had fan interaction planned throughout the whole thing because that was a big thing they wanted to see. I remember opening up the show, getting everybody to clap, and then trying to teach people lyrics to choruses as then we just transitioned smoothly from one song into the next. It was a production. It was great. And at the end of our first round, we got a near perfect score. And it was just because we knew, we knew exactly what they were looking for, and we gave them all those things, and we even got a score sheet after the fact. Well, we got into round 2, and at the end of our performance in round 2, we felt like we had only just done better. I think maybe we even had 5 more minutes in the set time. We may have added an extra song, but we felt even better after round 2. Didn't win round 2. And we felt really cheated because when we looked at the score sheet after the fact, areas that we had gotten perfect or near perfect scores in the first round were significantly lower the second round. I'm not an unforgiveness toward anybody about this, but it really seemed like the reason for that was because one of the judges was different, and this judge seemed to have a much more old school definition of the way he wanted to see what in his mind was a rock show produced. And it just seemed like what we did really wasn't his style. And because of that, to the best of our assessment, our score really suffered for it. And after all the hours and the time and the advertising on social media and the pushing to get fans to come to this event, it just felt like such a waste and such a disappointment. It's really hard not to take those things personally. Even though music can sometimes be very subjective, when there's things that you look like you objectively fulfilled this criteria, it's kind of like giving a professor everything they want on a written paper and then still getting a grade that makes no sense. But I've kind of learned, like, through all of those ups and downs, that I can turn my competitiveness off, and I have to make a conscious effort to do that a lot of times. But I can be a pretty competitive person, and that can add even a little bit more bite and edge to that. Through all of those things, winning can make you feel like a winner, and then losing after winning. It's one thing to like lose first and then win and let that be the end cap of your story. It's another thing to know what it feels like to win, to be a winner, and then to lose, and almost feel like the weight of, did I live up to the standard and the precedent I set to myself previously? Am I as good as I used to be? I mean, there's all these insecurities that can come after you. You have to really put those things down, and you have to be like, you know what? I'm being judged by other people. There's a lot of factors involved. The only thing that I can do is try to learn from it. And sometimes the learning is, well, that judge just didn't like us. Sometimes the learning is, maybe I don't want to compete in this kind of thing anymore. Maybe I want to go find something that's more specialized for what I'm looking at. Whatever the case may be, whether it's a competition or whether it's just the goals that you set for yourself. Really, one of the biggest deciding factors, I think, for a lot of people in life, for a lot of artists in music, is persistence and consistency, regardless of those feelings of wins or losses. Because when you win, the danger can be to believe your own hype, and when you lose, the danger can be to get overly discouraged. So that was just something I was thinking about the other day, and those are two of my favorite stories about those things. So, you know, start a conversation. Let me know in the comments if you've experienced those really varying lows and highs, because I think those contrasts are interesting, and the persistence it takes to go through all of those, I think, is a key and important and also just a really interesting thing. All right, until next time, I love you. Jesus loves you. Onward and upward.